Welcome to 705 Sports. This is our CFL playoff preview edition, which is why we are here on a Thursday lunch hour.
We are here on a Thursday, and thanks to the magic of television, we don't see the other 7 or 8 different entries into this as we had to.
Exactly. You know what? Thanks to our magic of editing and persuasion and me doing the editing so I can delete all the bad takes, we could get right into making us look wonderful. But you know what else is wonderful? Some winter football.
Yeah, it doesn't matter pretty much anywhere you go in this country right now, you're going to run into snow. Well, maybe not Toronto, but that's 2 weeks from now. So maybe Toronto too.
Maybe
but
Toronto.
Winnipeg's got a pile of snow.
So
Saskatchewan's got a pile of snow. Hamilton doesn't have a whole lot of snow yet, but they're talking about snow for Sunday.
So very well could be.
Could be. So, yep, you're just looking at snow, and Canadian football snow. Not as much as Green Bay last weekend,
Man,
but
I
anyway.
feel like I'm co-hosting with Craig Huckerby, our weather specialist at the moment. We're just talking all about the weather. But you know what? Whether you're a fan of these teams or not,
Boo.
see what I did? Oh, come on. Let's get into our CFL playoff brackets. We can start to see what teams are facing whom. So we have the Stampeders versus the ROUGHRIDERS. And we also have the Alouettes versus the Tiger Cats. As you can see here, the winner of the Stampeders ROUGHRIDERS game will move on to play the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and the winner of the Alouettes Tiger Cats game will move on to play the Toronto Argos. The winner of each one of these games will then move on to the Grey Cup finale. The winner of the Grey Cup finale obviously wins the Grey Cup.
Well, that's kind of the whole point of the season, isn't it?
You would think, unless you're the Edmonton Elks, the whole point is just to blow up your entire staff. But that is for another day, my friend. Let's get into the Western Conference. And I figure there's no better team to start off with than the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
It's got to be the heavy favorite. And it doesn't matter, and I have reasons they're not. I don't think they're going to do it. We'll get into them later. But they have to be, looking at the way they played, the confidence they have to be the heavy favorite by most CFL fans.
But
the reality is.
But there are some questions in the lineup. Andrew Harris and Bradley Oliveira both did get injured during the year. They're expected to be healthy for the playoffs, but time will tell. They have the bye week to get ready. Zach Collaros in the last game of the season actually did hit his hand off a helmet, and he left the game and only threw, I think, 2 or 3 passes after that issue. So that's another one. Field goal kicking has been another huge problem with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But at the end of the day, you look at those numbers, and like Collaros, 20 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. Adam Bighill and Jackson Jeffcoat are just absolute tanks when it comes to the defense. And this team can just score. You look here off a punt return against Saskatchewan, and this literally looks like they're playing a high school team. And Saskatchewan's not a bad team by any means necessary. Winnipeg is just that good. Besides the field goal kicking and maybe some injuries, there's not a lot of holes in their lineup, is there, Dan?
No, I think, though, one of the things that's going to bother me here is they lost their last 2 games, even though it was a half roster. They have a huge layoff. And we'll get into that a little later, but layoffs seem to come back and bite historically. Doesn't matter what sport. Teams in the butt. Like, it would almost be better to see, and there may be advantages and disadvantages to both of these, but better to see this team get to choose, do they want the bye or do they want to play? Like, maybe that should be an advantage, and not just in the CFL, but going forward, because look at baseball, look at all these other ones. You get that bye and you're kind of like,
You see the same thing in the NFL as well. And you know, there are advantages and disadvantages to it. You see where players get to recover from their injuries, but then you also see where players get rusty. But when you don't get the bye, that means you have to win right away. And that's
Saskatchewan's issue right now. They haven't played great, but they, again, losses here and there, but they have to win right now. Sunday. They must win Sunday.
They do. It's
just the way it is. They've been playing competitive games, though, going into this. So like last 3, they've had some sort of value in winning the football game, or
besides
not.
the season finale, which they got destroyed by Hamilton. Which Hamilton did put out a full roster, Saskatchewan did not. I think that's something to remember. But let's have a look at the graphic at some of Saskatchewan's key players going into the playoffs. Cody Fajardo, it really depends on which Cody Fajardo we see. At the beginning of the year, he was right up there with Mike O'Reilly and
Does
Zach
it depend
Collaros.
on which Cody Fajardo we see or which receiving core we see?
Bit of both. You know, Saskatchewan has had some issues with getting 50-50 balls.
Green and white.
And I also don't think they use their running back enough. William Powell is another guy who I think could be used a lot more aggressively. He almost gets half a first down per carry, which is super important. Schaefer Baker, with Moore still being injured, Schaefer Baker is their explosive player.
He's their over the top. You got to run, you got to keep up with him. Both teams they're going to play, though, if they get out of Calgary and win, can keep up with him. They have that downfield defense, as long as he doesn't make people miss. If he makes people miss,
then you're in some trouble, because that's one thing Saskatchewan is very good at doing. They are able to use that, and they like to do more of a methodical drive of getting first downs, and Schaefer Baker has been the guy to actually make the big catch and the big play, which is something they didn't have at the beginning of the year. Also, shout out, he is a Canadian player from Oakville, I believe. So that is also awesome.
And he might be the only time we see him this year. He's very well NFL. There's a very good chance he's NFL bound.
He very well could be. And another player who might be on Saskatchewan, and you might laugh when I talk about their field goal kicking, but they are actually one of the better teams when it comes in the league at getting the 3 points. So Saskatchewan's a team, you know, that if they don't necessarily get all the way and get a touchdown out of their drives, that their drives are not going to be wasted. They are at least still going to put up points as long as Fajardo doesn't throw the interception or doesn't throw his receiving core under the bus. Because as we've said, that has been a problem with Saskatchewan, and I'll be curious to see, does the team play like a team?
There's a chemistry issue in that room. Any of the analysts that you watch and listen to and some of the fans, they'll admit there is a chemistry issue in that room. It's not Edmonton Elks' chemistry issue.
No.
But it is still a chemistry issue, and I think a lot of it comes from that. Like, again, you don't see Fajardo celebrating with the receivers in the end zone anymore. You don't see any of that. There's definitely a divisive. Will they come together? That's a very good question. Another team that needs to come together, though, they've been doing really, really well for the last 6 out of 7 games here, Calgary. They're dangerous.
I think Calgary, and we'll get into this later, but I think Calgary might be the one kind of, I'm almost going to call a sleeper team. And we have a graphic going over Calgary's key players. And you might look at Bolivar Mitchell and be like, ugh, that touchdown to interception ratio is pretty bad. But it really improved in the second half of the season. So if you remember, after the first 4 games, he had one touchdown and either 6 or 7 interceptions.
Yeah.
He finished with 10 touchdowns to 13 interceptions. So that tells me he really started to find his game. And he started to find his game once Kamari Jordan rejoined the roster. He is, when we talked about Schaefer Baker being that explosive receiver, Jordan's the same way. They also have a strong running game from Carey. He got 7 touchdowns this year. So don't be surprised to see Calgary run.
The Saskatchewan defense has been really good against run.
They have.
You're going to turn Calgary into one-dimensional team. I'm just wondering if that dimension's enough to beat Saskatchewan.
And you know what, Dan, you raised a good point out of that, because Saskatchewan actually had the second best defense in the CFL, where Calgary also has a very good defense, actually, only letting about just under 19 points a game through. So I think this could be a real defensive match, and it could end up coming down to which teams get touchdowns, which teams get field goals. Which
won't do so well for their ratings if it's a defensive match, but we won't like that. That's been part of the problem, part of the complaints all year. Scoring's been low. Like, CFL is a scoring league, and if we're going to have a defensive juggernaut of a game, great for CFL fans, not great for younger folk.
Which definitely, and I mean, you know what, the CFL scoring has been down a little bit this year, as you know, that's something we really noticed even when we were breaking down these teams, of teams scoring around that 20 to 22 points a game, where the average CFL before was around 27 to 30.
Yeah.
So I mean, scoring is definitely down a bit, but I also think it's because, for one thing, the layoff, which I'm expecting these playoffs to be really good playoffs, because now they've been playing. I know towards the end of the year the scoring started to get up, so I think the scoring could be high in the playoffs. But I do think Calgary is a team that could very well, with their strong defense, their running game, and Bolivar Mitchell's the type of player that doesn't seem to make the mistakes in the playoffs, and Cody Fajardo might.
Out of the 2 semifinals, or quarterfinals, whatever, I think we're quarters right now, out of those 2 games this weekend, this is probably the better game of the 2.
I agree with you on that one, but we got to go to a commercial break. And then we're going to break down the Eastern Conference, and then after that, we'll get into the actual playoff games. So stay right there, enjoy the rest of your lunch, and we'll be right back.
Season's greetings from all of us at Maker North.
May all that is beautiful, meaningful, and brings you joy by yours this holiday season and throughout the coming year. From the management and staff from Community Living Algoma, we wish you a Christmas that is merry and bright.
So we've come back to this CFL preview, which you're seeing on Thursday at noon. Don't forget, we will be here Friday at noon too. We do have another show to go then, and we have to come back and look at the Eastern Division, and somehow my co-host here decided to put the sinking ship that is the Boatman first. See, so we have to talk about these Argos who are going to have the same problem as Winnipeg, which is they're going to have that layoff. Mm-hmm. It's not going to maybe harm them as much because they played a little more competitive games into the end of the season than Winnipeg did. There's a disadvantage to winning so many games up front. You get to sell out your home playoff game, but you also kind of got to stay competitive. So go ahead here, my friend, with your Argonauts.
Okay. You know what? We'll get into your choking Tiger Cats later, not earlier, where, choking hazards, be careful, children. But let's get into the Toronto Argos. And you know what? I'm going to be completely honest here. I still am 50-50 on this Argo team, although they did win the East. McLeod Buffalo-Thompson started the year really strong, struggled a little bit in the middle, and then finished strong. So I'll be curious to see how he goes. This will be his first experience playing playoff football. And especially if they end up facing Hamilton, it's going to be a much louder environment than what he's realistically used to in Toronto. Ricky Collins Jr. is going to be a receiver who is an impact receiver. Although he isn't your touchdown guy, he's a guy that gets the first downs that can make some plays. The running game is going to be big for Toronto. We just don't know who's going to be running the ball yet because both their running backs are nursing injuries. Eric Rogers is expected to make his return. He actually was playing a little bit in the finale. I think he only did 1 or 2 plays, but he is healthy and he's going. Chris Edwards has been the defensive player who has really stuck out for me in Toronto. And Boris Beatty has been a kicker who has really impressed me, to be honest with you, Dan. He is kicking the ball at a very good accuracy rating. He's making those longer field goals, and it's making it when Toronto can force the ball back, even when they can't finish the drives with touchdowns. Like what we said about Calgary, they're still getting points.
But their defense is fluidly messed up. If I can put that nicely, when I say sinking ship, they have the offense, but if you have so many holes in the hull, which is your defense, teams are going to rip that apart. And realistically, if Hamilton wins, you have 2 home games. You're playing on the road for your second game. Hamilton has home field advantage all the way through because they will jam-pack BMO Field.
And that's the interesting thing for Hamilton as well. And we'll get into that in a bit, but Hamilton doesn't have a whole lot of travel if they can go all the way. But for Toronto, I do agree with you, Dan. I think the defense is a bit of an issue. As we have here, Toronto average scores 22.1 points a game, but they allow 22.7 points a game, which when I did all the math for this, I was kind of like, Toronto's defense,
but that tells you they blew out people and kept them low, or they lost big. That's what that tells you. So which team do you pick up here?
It depends, because do we get the team that blew out Hamilton, or do we get the team that almost lost to Ottawa? And mind you, Montreal just lost to Ottawa. But I mean, still, and that was a game Montreal put out a full roster, but we'll get into that. But still, for Toronto, you just don't know. They have a lot of players who haven't played on the bigger stage. And I'm curious to see how they do. I do think for Toronto, they might benefit from the bye a bit more than Winnipeg, because as you're right, Dan, they've been playing competitive football up to this point, and Toronto is nursing some injuries with both their running backs, and Eric Rogers, who is a guy who's won the Grey Cup before, so he is adding that veteran experience to the receiving core. And Toronto did pick up Josh Huff from Calgary, because Calgary decided they didn't want him anymore. Kind of surprising. But Toronto did add some more depth to their already good offense. But I do agree with you, Dan. If the Argos do lose, it will be because of their defense.
Yes. And speaking of teams that may or do lose when they get to the playoffs, I will give you Hamilton's not very good at this. But we have to go talk about them. And it really comes down to which quarterback we are going to see. If we're going to see the Masoli that chokes, then we're all in trouble. If we're going to see the Masoli that can play well, or the team that even at a half roster played really well against Saskatchewan. There weren't a whole lot of holes, granted, Saskatchewan.
Still.
They seem to use it as, I want to say, as a practice game to kind of fix some of those issues, which included some defensive issues. Believe it or not, shocker, this might be a team that goes all the way.
And you know what? I hate saying this, but Hamilton does have a very deadly team. Brandon Banks is starting to find his game. Tim White has become an electric receiver. Masoli sucked to start the year, finished strong. And surprisingly, this I think was my biggest surprise. Hamilton, let's be honest, Dan, they're not known for their defense.
No.
But this year, they found a way, for the most part. They had some games where the defense, in my opinion, looked absolutely terrible. But for the majority of the season, their defense has been good, only allowing 17.4 points per game. And we got to take that into consideration when they're average scoring around 22 points a game. See, that's a good spread.
Legitimately speaking, you look at those two, this is your team that should go through. If you look at all three of them with if you take those averages and we play this game on paper, which nobody ever does.
No.
But you play these games on paper, take your averages. This is the team that comes out of the East.
My only concern with Hamilton, and this is no disrespect,
is if they choke.
They choke, and they're not good at winning the close game.
But if you
watch a team like Toronto, and I know they're the sinking ship, and I will agree with you, Dan, their defense, it needs work. But Toronto has been able to win the close games. Winnipeg has been able to win some close games. Montreal, Calgary, even Saskatchewan. Hamilton, do you notice they either win by
Absolutely
10, 17, 20 points, or they lose?
Which means when they blow out the Alouettes and they blow out the Argos, we won't have to worry about things like that. Right. Good. Glad you agree. Anyway, we have to talk about those Alouettes now. We weren't sure what they were going to do at the beginning of the season. I don't even think I had them as a playoff team at one point. I thought Ottawa was going to beat them. But anyway, we're here now. We have to look at them. We have to deal with them. And, well, they'll be dealt with quickly and swiftly while they play in the snow in Hamilton.
And you see, honestly, Montreal is a team, it depends who shows up.
No
Trevor
offense,
Harris,
offense.
mind you, is looking good in the quarterback position. Montreal was a very high-scoring team, mind you, again, mostly under Vernon Adams Jr. However, I actually, in a lot of ways, prefer the offense through Trevor Harris. It's a lot safer. It's not getting the big play as often, not going for it as often, but it's getting first downs, putting together drives, and scoring. For Hamilton, if they're worried about anyone on that Montreal roster, it's William Stanback. He is the best running back we have seen in the CFL in a long time. Jake Winnipeg with 7 touchdowns this year, so you know he's going to be someone that is going to make the big play in the red zone, which is something Montreal has been missing. And Montreal's defense, as much as it's been hot and cold,
has been warmer at the end of the year.
Yes, it's been better, but they did allow the second most points out of all playoff teams left. So we do have to look into that for Montreal. But I do honestly think the Alouettes have I'm not just saying it because I'm an Argo fan. I do feel the Alouettes have a legitimate shot at beating the Tiger Cats. It just depends on which team shows up.
If the Alouettes beat the Tiger Cats, they probably beat your Argos. Let's be honest here, because if they can pick apart a second best defense in the league with the preparation time they're going to get, they probably pick apart your defense.
More than likely.
And be the surprise team out of the East. An Alouette Stampeders thing is not completely out of the realm of. Oh, they're all there. It's all there. So it's probably the longest shot. I haven't looked at maybe over the break I will, but I haven't looked at the actual odds for this thing. But Alouettes Argos would probably, or Alouettes and Stampeders would probably be your furthest shot for the.
But that's one thing I'll say that I do love about the CFL. You even look at your lowest teams in the playoffs versus your highest ranked team in the playoffs, and you could still feasibly see one beating the other. Montreal has beat Winnipeg this year, right? Toronto has beat Winnipeg this year.
Yep.
Hamilton has beat Toronto this year. They have pushed Winnipeg to a breaking point. You just never know. You look at the end of the regular season when we saw Ottawa get that come from behind win, taking down the Alouettes, making it that they had no chance to get home field advantage. The CFL playoffs are completely wide open.
There is parity in this league because they are the second tier league for a lot of professional players. They may be the first tier league for a lot of Canadian university players coming out. But this is the D league for the NFL. Let's be honest. You want a good player. If you play well in the CFL, you're probably getting offered an NFL contract. Might not be the best NFL contract, but you could. There's been people that have done that. This is, you're not good enough for the States, but if you don't mind playing with the same football size that you play in college football, and on a bit wider field, and a bit longer field, then maybe you go up and spend some time in the cold tundra.
And you know what? And then you do get some amazing, high-octane, fast football. But we got to go to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to break down the 2 games going on Sunday, and plus Dan and I after that will give you our picks, which might surprise you. Stay right there. We'll be right back. May all that is beautiful, meaningful, and brings you joy by yours this holiday season and throughout the coming year. From the management and staff from Community Living Algoma, we wish you a Christmas that is merry and bright. From the management and staff at Construction Equipment Company, Inc., we wish you and your family a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Wishing you all a safe and happy holiday season.
From our family to yours, we hope your holiday season is filled with wonderful surprises, treats, and non-stop laughter. Sioux Mill has been helping customers with their building needs for over 100 years, and we thank you for your patronage. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from Sioux Mill.
So we're going to admit something right off the bat here, because we're going to get into some odds, which may change by Thursday at noon when you see this, but right now, Wednesday morning at just before 10 a.m., the odds are Montreal is going to win this game against the Tiger Cats by 4.5. And that you're going to see on our next one here, the Stampeders are going to beat the ROUGHRIDERS by 1.5. That's the spread right now. So
That's surprising.
it's a little surprising on both. They think there's going to be, I'm looking at it here, sportsinteraction.com has 46.5 as the over-under for the East game, and 41.5 is the over-under for the West. That doesn't surprise me either, because Western football's always been a little more defensive.
Yeah.
Eastern's always been a little more gun-ho. So right now, as I said, Wednesday morning, that's your odds.
Those could change, obviously.
Montreal by a field goal, plus 1.5, and less than that for the Stamps. Do you think it probably changes? I hope so. I'm really, really screwed when it comes to my picks. Anyway, we got to talk about that Alouettes and Tiger Cats game. The Tiger Cats should walk all over this, but you go ahead.
But you know what? Let's put up a graphic that's going to go over the keys to victory for both of these teams. So for the Alouettes, I'm going to say limit the big plays by Hamilton, because we've talked about this a lot on the show here. Hamilton's a team that they like the explosive. They want to go for that 30, 40, 50-yard plays.
Better if he was accurate when he tries that, though.
That does help. Get an early start, because with Hamilton, I find with them, if you can get a jump on them quick, sometimes they're a little timid. And run with power.
If you're going to run on Hamilton, though, go to the outside.
I think Standback can just plow people over, though, right? So, I mean, I think Hamilton's got to be ready for Standback to take over, and then it opens to play action. But for Hamilton, big plays make big leads. Reason why I say that is I think if they can tear apart Montreal's defense, this game could be over before it even starts with Hamilton. I also feel with Hamilton, they need to just make sure they slow down William Standback and hold Montreal to under 20 points, which is something I think is very feasible. Actually, you are seeing there Dan Standback running to the outside, which is something that he likes to do.
I didn't even see this clip ahead of time. It's not bad.
Now, mind you, when we're seeing the scrambling here, this is when they had Verdum Adams Jr., which I don't see Harris doing this, which this is something that is going to make life a little easier for Hamilton trying to get this victory. But right now, the spread is calling for Montreal to take this game. We will give you our picks in a bit, but I do feel for this, if Hamilton can not do plays like this, where Masoli, like, actually, that wasn't a terrible throw there, but like when I see a throw like that, it makes me worried with Masoli. Is that going to get intercepted? Because he has a habit.
My worry with Masoli is throwing it 45 yards downfield and missing his receiver by 8 yards.
You know, because he has, and I'm going to do a bit of a throwback here. If anyone remembers Michael Bishop, he was a quarterback that played for the Argos and then went on to arena football. He had such a strong arm that he could bomb it 70 yards, but he'd overthrow it. And we see that with Masoli. He tends to overthrow the football.
Or miss by 8 or 9 yards, one way or the other, left or right.
He
leads them too far, or he doesn't lead them far enough.
Which is very true.
Great when you throw the ball downfield, but if you can't do it accurately, stop doing it.
But then it does cause the problem where we see it, where you saw it a lot in the beginning of the year. Masoli can get picked off a lot. So that's going to be an interesting game. But now let's move on to the Stampeders versus the RoughRiders. This is another one where I think home field advantage for both of these games are super important, but especially for the RoughRiders. The RoughRiders need to just not force the big play. Don't forget about their running game and use their crowd to their advantage. On the flip side for Calgary, force those 50-50 balls. Because Fajardo, like Masoli, a lot of times when he goes for those big plays, they turn to interceptions. Bolivar Mitchell needs to be on his game. I don't see, if Mitchell doesn't play well, they do not win.
No, they don't. Absolutely not.
But
that's both quarterbacks. That could be all four quarterbacks. Whatever quarterback plays like crap, their team loses.
But hear me out, not so much for a team like Montreal, because they have such a strong running game. Not even so much for a team like Saskatchewan, because their defense is so good.
You could say that with Hamilton, though, too.
You could, but Hamilton, remember, they either win big or they lose big. That seems to be their mentality. For this game, if Calgary can use the run and the pass, because they don't use their running game enough, I don't feel, for how good their running game is. And if Bolivar Mitchell can either be on his game, or Dickinson knows right away, get him out and put Jake Mayer in if he starts to struggle. Because remember, this isn't a game where Mitchell can have a slow start. Or if he doesn't finish strong, you got to put Jake Mayer in, who realistically could be a starting quarterback in this league, no problem. But that is going to be definitely a close game. And I think, Dan, you're right when you said this will be the closer game out of the two. And by the odds, you said Calgary would get this victory, which
absolutely, which fits into what you're thinking about next.
It is, but it doesn't fit to the standings, because the standings show that realistically Hamilton and Montreal should win. They both have the home field. I mean, not Hamilton, Montreal, sorry. Hamilton and Saskatchewan should both win. If Hamilton and Montreal win, I don't know what the heck's going on. But now, so we've broken down the games, we've broken down the teams. Now what I want to do is go over my picks, and then we'll go over the wrong picks. Dan, I'm just kidding. I kid. I don't know why you put up with me in the morning.
Can I get out of here yet? It's 53.
Well, you know what? Let's take a look at my picks for the CFL Grey Cup playoffs. So we're going to start with the Stampeders versus the Rough Riders. I think the Stampeders are going to take the game, but it is going to be close. And then I think the Alouettes are going to beat the Tiger Cats. And the reason why, I think the running game is just going to be too much for Hamilton to handle. You're giving me a death stare, and I'm sorry, Dan. But I do think the Argos will take down the Alouettes, and I'm even with being a fan of the Argos, I feel that if the Argos offense is good and if their running game is healthy, they can definitely go point for point with Montreal. I think the Stampeders are going to surprise the entire league and beat the Blue Bombers. And we're going to get into our Grey Cup finale, which I feel then my Argos are going to lose to the Calgary Stampeders. I think the Calgary Stampeders were the best team in the second half of the season, only losing one of their last 7. You have to respect that, and I think teams are going to not respect it, and they're going to think that they're not as good of a team as they are, and I think Calgary's just going to clean board.
And that's all fun and wonderful. That's exactly what you think. Now, it is no secret, if you've watched the show, I am a Ticats fan. It's also no secret that if I had to pick a team out of the West, it's Saskatchewan. And if you look at my picks here, which hey, it worked! Magic! Sorry, first time ever. Usually I screw that up. But anyway, if you look at my picks here, that's in the end how I have it going down, but I still have my Ticats not winning the cup. I look at it this way: defense wins championships. Ticats have the second best defense in the league. We've just done that. The Blue Bombers have I think it was first best defense in the league. So, relatively speaking, I should be saying Blue Bombers Cats, but that layoff, as I said at the beginning, is going to hurt the Bombers. If whoever plays them can get up, say it's the Rough Riders like I have here, can get up 2 or 3 touchdowns in the first quarter or quarter and a half before Winnipeg wakes up, yeah, they're going to have a packed stadium. They should be hyped up, but there is rust. It doesn't matter what happens. And if whatever team plays them gets that lead on them, same as the Alouettes, whoever comes out of there, Ticats, gets that lead on them. And if it's Ticats Alouettes, BMO is going to be bouncing for the Ticats. Yeah. Which is so sad to say. Toronto needs to figure out how to get more Toronto fans. But that's a different story.
That's another topic.
And it's an after season topic, because I really want to see. The other thing that bothers me here is putting these games on a Sunday.
I was surprised by the decision.
We have college football on a Saturday, and granted, college football is still big in a lot of parts of the world. But NFL is just a juggernaut. Nobody puts things up against NFL football on that Sunday. And why are we doing
The
this as a league that
only-
wants to generate?
The only thing I'm wondering, are they doing it on the Sunday to avoid Hockey Night in Canada? Because they are going for a Canadian viewership. And when they go up against Hockey Night in Canada, but...
Play them at noon and 3:30.
But as I'm saying that, they are afternoon games, so...
Play them at noon and 3:30 on a Saturday, or put them on a Friday night and a Saturday night.
You know, I think it's just normally the playoff games are on Sunday. And they've been that way for a long time. But you know what, Dan? I do actually agree with you. I think Sunday isn't the right decision. The TV ratings could hurt.
TV ratings are going to hurt significantly. And it won't... Because the CFL fans are so driven, it's not going to hurt the in-seat attendance, except for maybe in Toronto. But... The other, you aren't arguing.
No.
You know it's a problem. But I think I will be happy to see my Cats and the Rough Riders in the Grey Cup, and you're happy to see the Stampeders and your Argos in the Cup. And next week, when both of our teams all lose, we're going to have to rejig all this and talk next Friday. There will not be a CFL special next Thursday at noon.
No,
it will
there
just
will
fall
not.
into our normal Friday show. But be sure to tune in to see us on tomorrow at noon. And we'll be doing our regular show. But until then, I think it's almost time, is it not, my friend? Or he wants to hold me up.
I do want to remind you, if you want to send your questions to us, we are now taking video questions. What we're going to do with those, we will air your question on the show. You get to be a part of the 705 Sports community. And then we will answer your question to the best of our abilities on the show. So make sure you send me an email. The email will be... whoosh, on a graphic. I'm magical.
Or send it to our Facebook.
Or send it to our Facebook. You know what? Message Dan directly. Message myself directly. Just message us, okay? We're great people. But I can see you're ready to throw the papers.
Yes.
Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Make sure to tune in tomorrow at noon for the rest of your sports coverage. But for now, we got to go. That was good. The best of the holiday season from Twin Mechanical Contracting Limited. The staff and management of Twin Mechanical Contracting Limited wish you and yours a season of health and happiness filled with joy of the holiday season. Merry Christmas from all of us at Twin Mechanical Contracting Limited. We all know that 705 Sports loves to take questions from the community, and we're looking to go one step further. Send in your video question, and it will be used on the show. Dan and I will break down your question and answer it the best to our ability so you can really feel you're a part of the 705 Sports community. 705 Sports airs every Friday at noon on TV and Sioux Online's Facebook page, plus our video-on-demand service at SiouxOnline.com.